If you ever wanted to start a theme park in Planet Coaster 2 but not known where to begin, staring at a blank map wondering how can I make a park out of this? Well, this video might be exactly what you need to get that park started. If you're the same as me, you'll find it quite hard to build when there's nothing around to inform what you're building. You need existing landscape, buildings, interaction with something, just so you can react with what you're building. If you're wanting to create a theme park, building a template map first is the best way to start. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to do just that. And if you didn't already know from the few teasers that I've shared, I'm starting a new park series soon called Moorview Meadow, and this will be the starter file for that park. Over this summer and beyond, I'm going to be transforming this landscape into a theme park. So definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already, if you'd like to see that project unfold. I'm so excited for it, and it's been in the planning for pretty much a year now. I'm going to create some awesome rides, theming and storytelling in a similar level of detail to what I did in Whispering Woods, my themed area series, and it should be my best work yet. So let's look at how you can start a project just like this on your own. This is how to create a realistic park template in Planet Coaster 2. This isn't my first park series. I've made quite a few park series in the past that have started out as an interesting template map that I've evolved into a theme park. And the main feature of those is always terrain. There are very few parks out there that are completely flat. Most of them are like this because they've been built on an already existing flat piece of land, but land often isn't flat, especially here in the UK and Europe. It undulates and varies and gives opportunities for really interesting theme park design. Specifically at Alton Towers, which is my main precedent for Moorview Meadow, there's a lot of terrain in this park, and it really informs most of the creative decisions behind the rides, and I think that's a fascinating thing to design around. When manufacturers and designers are designing real roller coasters for parks, one of the first things they will consider is the terrain and the environment that it's going to be placed in. So not only is this a more interesting and fun way to design, it's also a far more realistic one. With that, let's get into the time lapse and I'll show you where I began. I started by first establishing the size of this park and the scale that I wanted it to be. These two blueprints were roughly the size of my previous series, Whispering Woods, and I knew that I wanted this park to be about double the size of that. After this, I started roughly sketching out the ideas for other landforms such as roads, lakes, rivers, areas of dense vegetation, and then it was at this point I decided that I wanted part of this project to be a farm, so I started to outline fields and different areas of farmland. After this, I began on the terrain. Now I don't really think there's any exact way of doing this, you just sort of have to mess around and see what works. And keep experimenting until you get the desired effect. I knew I wanted to have quite high up areas and quite low down areas to hide certain rides, so that was sort of the main starting point from here. I also started to carve out areas I knew I wanted water in at this point as well, with these most commonly being at the lower points of the map, as the water from the higher points would travel down into it. I then started to build up this quite large bund at the front of the park because I knew I wanted a railway line to run the whole way across the map. The idea in my head was that it provided a nice boundary between outside and inside the park, and it can really help creating like infrastructure or landscaping features like this to be the defining part of your park. Think about Alton Towers, that has the towers, or like quite a lot of theme parks will have either a lake or a big hill, so this was sort of what I was thinking of with my theme park. It'll have a train line running through it, and the actual centre of what will be the theme park is a rail yard. When I was speaking earlier about views, I started to add this big hill at the back of the park with the hopes that this would hide a large coaster in the future. There are certain design liberties you can take when designing your template park, just like this, because as much as I want the park to adapt around the existing landscape, it is still a game and I want to have fun. Now would probably be a good time to mention that I don't think most of these clips happen in a sort of sensical order, they happen in the order that I built them. These are just when I came up with different ideas, wanted to experiment with what would work, so I just did it. So if the sort of progression of the park isn't linear, that's why. You can see here I'm messing around with different scenery brushes to bring landscaping into the park, and that sort of brings me on to my next most important point, the importance of landscaping. Landscaping and connection to nature is one of the most important parts of a European theme park in my opinion. It can definitely soften the perceived brutality of the coasters, and it just gives you a nice area to chill out from as well when the parks can get a bit overwhelming. It's no coincidence that some of my favourite theme parks in the world offer beautiful natural landscaping. It can really help add to a themed experience, and I think it just makes it a generally more enjoyable place to be. I want this park, like many of the other parks in the UK and across Europe, to have a really nice connection to existing nature. one that's quite sensitive around it as well in terms of not removing trees or destroying what's already there. So I prioritise this a lot in my template park. And it also brings along a cool design challenge later on, given that most of the trees in existing landscaping can't be removed, so designing attractions around that should be quite interesting, and similar to how we have to design stuff here in the UK and across Europe. So I hope you can start to see how much of an emphasis on nature I'm putting in this park. It's probably the most important aspect of it. When you heard me talk earlier about part of this park, or like the template map being farmland, this is me adding in a few of those fields now. The best way I found to do this was to not really care about the neatness or consistency of things, because that's exactly how they are in real life. Most of these fields aren't a perfect rectangular shape and don't have perfect crop lines running exactly down the centre at exact spacings. This is a natural environment and I want to make it look lived in and natural. So making things imperfect and sort of feeling natural about the way they've expanded is the best way to do it. I then brought some of the ground finishes through to sort of indicate an entry point into the railway yard. And if you wonder where the inspiration for this sort of stuff comes from, it's mainly just from when I've been travelling around and searching on Google Maps as well. It's a great source of information for a bird's eye view of building stuff like this, and it's really helpful at coming up with different ideas. The Moorview Meadow area isn't built off of any specific location in real life. It's more of a culmination of quite a few different ideas I had through looking at lots of different locations on Google Maps, so it can be a really helpful tool. You can see here that I'm adding in the railway line that runs across the bund at the front of the park. I did originally build this with a running train on, but we don't really have any modern types of trains in Planet Coaster 2, at least not at the moment, so I didn't end up actually having this as a moving element. We get the choice either between old-fashioned steam trains or the monorail, which is way too big and modern, so it doesn't really fit, so I hope we do get a nicer train in the future. You can see here that I'm starting to think of the wider area outside of the park by bringing the railway line across this sort of river that I've made with the plans to build a bridge later. I do think adding a bit of context around your park is one of the best things you can do to really sell the realism, especially if you want to set it in an immersive, realistic environment. And then I added a tunnel, just like I did for the train, to disguise the end of this road. And then when I mentioned at the start of the episode where none of these clips are in any sort of sensical order, I guess, I had the idea that I could put a few houses around the entrance of the park, as that's sort of quite realistic for a UK park, I guess, especially if you look at Alton Towers. There are houses literally right outside the entrance to the park, so I wanted to add a couple of those, sort of in a 1960s modern style, or that was sort of the idea I was going for anyway. This did take quite a while, but I'm quite happy with the result. Although you won't see them implemented now, they do appear in the episode a fair bit later. I then did the same sort of effect with a tunnel at the end of the road that I did earlier on with this river here, trying to disguise the start of it from where it goes outside the buildable boundary of the map. Next I want to talk about inspiration and sort of where you can get it from, because it comes at the most random times for me. One day when I was visiting Alton Towers, there was some roadworks on my usual route, so my sat-nav took me through the town of Belper. Just before the town there's a village called Sawmills where I passed this. A railway line formed on a huge stone wall with a tunnel through it. And instantly the ideas just started coming. I even had to pull over a little bit further down the road and get my notes app out, just to actually write down what I was thinking at the time, because I was definitely sure I wasn't going to forget it. This was the entrance to my new park, and I was absolutely adamant that it was going to look as close to this as possible. And while the end product definitely doesn't look exactly like it, I'm really happy that it developed into something a little bit more unique. And for me now, it feels instantly iconic for exactly what I wanted Moorview Meadow to be. I found the process of this spot really quite exciting, to be honest, and it's so nice just being able to put your own unique stamp on an environment, and I think it makes parks, when you're building them especially, feel a lot more personal and interesting. They feel a lot more real as well, and when you're making environments like this that feel lived in and alive, it just adds so much more character and history and story to your park than I don't think you would ever get with just a blank map. And these are things that you can definitely build on as the park grows as well, and the environment around it obviously ages, which I think is quite an interesting mechanic I want to play with in this park series. Think about Alton Towers with the towers that have been there for ages, or even Disney with a human-made structure at the centre of the park. It just gives it such an identity. I then added in this brilliant blueprint of a train that I found to give the area a bit of detail. Then I went in and really grounded these additions I was putting in with some foliage to soften them into the environment. I think this is also a really important tool you can use to show the area and the park's age, just by how well established the foliage is around it. And then I added a little bit of detailing with the area's first sign, letting you know that this is Moorview Rail Yard. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for supporting me. And if you're enjoying what you're seeing, please leave a like. It really helps me know that videos like this are exactly what you want to see. And if you're not already, subscribing to the channel would be awesome too. I'm really trying to hit 25,000 subscribers by the end of the year, making a big push with this channel over summer that I'm really excited to show you the content for. So if you haven't, please subscribe and come along for the journey. This park series is going to be my best one yet, and I'm so excited to explore it further. After this, I knew it was time to make something iconic inside the actual park boundary, something that would have been here before for quite a long time and extensively used, and probably a building that is quite important locally that the park would either want to or have to save in the transformation from this into a theme park. Something similar to the towers at Alton Towers, but with a railway theme. I started researching buildings in railway yards, especially historic ones, sort of late Victorian style, and came up with these images that I was absolutely fascinated by, and I thought that it just exactly captured the vibe I was going for. As you'll see, the final product does stray quite far from these images, but that's the whole point in taking inspiration from things like this. My best advice for building stuff like this, like buildings and realistic coasters in general, is to look at reference photos and take advice from them. You're looking at them not to exactly recreate what you want, but to be inspired by them and to hopefully create something better out of it that more suits what you're trying to do. So this is the process of me making that building, and I have included most of the construction footage because I think it's important to show that you don't always get things right the first time. This building probably took the good part of a couple of hours to get exactly how I wanted it. I originally started off way too big, as you can see here, like the scale of it is just insane. I thought especially for the size of the rail yard I'm going for and the size of the building that I wanted to be incorporated into the park later down the line, this was just way too big, so I did dramatically reduce the scale of it, as you can see here, and quite a lot of it was just experimenting with different materials. Obviously this building would have probably been constructed around maybe late Victorian times, so I was expecting it to look quite aged, but then also you do get buildings like that have aged quite well because of how well they were built. So you'd expect it to still be in a semi-decent condition, which is why this one sort of is. And I'm really happy with the end result of it. It pretty much embodies the exact vibe I wanted, as much as those photos that I showed earlier were quite sort of dark and dingy and quite I don't know, a bit like dirty looking, like they had like covered in coal and everything. I did want this to be a little bit more refined, with it being, I think, more of a rail yard of where like trains would come in to get repaired sort of thing. I'm not saying it would be the most spotless place in the world, but in the condition that maybe that it would be left in towards the end of its operational life as a rail yard. This was sort of what I imagined, and just going through and adding bits of detail into this, it was quite exciting because I was just thinking of all the possibilities of what could happen to this building when it gets added into the actual park of Moorview Meadow. You could imagine this building would have been what we call in the UK listed, which means that it's protected and can't be demolished or changed the way that it looks too much. Can't be messed around with or modernised. It sort of has to be kept in a historic condition, which is sort of my main idea for this building. When it eventually does get brought into the park itself, I do like the idea of sort of it being refurbished and brought back to its former glory, so I do think that's a quite interesting design opportunity, at least from creating a park's perspective. It'd be quite interesting to see what it looks like. Obviously Alton Towers sort of have a similar situation where they have to keep the towers themselves in a certain, I don't know, I guess a degree of build quality. They can't let them deteriorate too much, and when they do works to them, they spend a hell of a lot of money on them, trying to get them to a good standard, and especially built with the same materials that were used back then to keep it in fitting. Especially if you think about things when Hex opened, mainly that ride happened because the park said look, we're going to spend so much money restoring the towers so that you'll let us build an attraction so close to it, basically, and that's sort of how it happened. They built an attraction in the towers so that the council would allow them, and probably give them a grant of money, I imagine, as well, to spend money on the towers and repair them. So it's pretty cool having that sort of design idea around stuff like this. I then found this nice, more modern looking warehouse on the workshop and added this to the area to give a bit more interest and massing to the site. Same for this one here. As long as you credit their work, the workshop can be a great library of stuff to put in your parks. I then began extending the railway into the rail yard and adding a system where the trains can be taken on and off the track. Now, my knowledge of trains and their operations isn't fantastic, so if you've got any suggestions on how this system could be improved, please let me know in the comments and I'll definitely implement it in the next episode of this series. This area here was just a little turning circle for the actual train to be turned on the track. I also think structures like this present exciting design opportunities later down the line in the park. And then I also added this crane from the workshop to allow trains to be taken on and off the track. That was a tongue twister. After this, I moved on to filling out the area with some scenery pieces and foliage to really make it realistic. I also added this long retaining wall that runs along the back of the rail yard. It just keeps the land in and stops it from falling into the field. And I also went around adding a few more details, like this drainage ditch at the back of the car park. Then I began to connect the road at the front of the park to the sort of rest of the biome that I was creating around it by adding this field. I had quite a few fields around this map, so I won't talk about it in too much detail until later, but this is basically just adding a layer of foliage around the perimeter of the field, using the terrain paint to paint it a different colour, adding a bit of a bund at the front of it, and then adding a brick wall and some foliage lining along the road. This is very reminiscent of how roads are in the countryside in the UK, and quite a lot of European countries to be fair. And it sells the exact look I wanted on the approach to this park. I added a bit of a control house here so the operator can change the tracks to bring trains on and off this straight section, and added a load more foliage around so that these built elements could really settle in. I then moved on to one of my favourite parts of the project, creating this large brick viaduct that takes the train over the water. This was inspired by quite a few different bridges, but predominantly the West Sussex Viaduct here in the UK. I just really liked how intricate the brickwork was on these arches, and it adds a nice bit of detail in the bottom corner of the map. Now I thought it would be a good time to mention what is actually happening with the rest of this series. Now, Moorview Meadow is going to be probably my most intricately detailed theme park series yet, maybe even one of the longest. I'm not going to divulge the exact details of this series now because I want to keep certain elements of it a surprise, but you've got a lot to look forward to with this one and I'm so excited by it. I've had lots of coasters for this park planned out for a while now, including one or two of them actually being built, so that does mean that this series will not be a time-lapse series, more of an update style similar to how I did Cedar Cove. This allows me more time to actually build in these episodes instead of spending a lot of time editing like I have in this video, which, don't get me wrong, I do find fun, but it is very time consuming. So it will allow the actual build episodes to be much longer and feature a lot more happening within them. They'll probably feature 3 or 4 updates like I did with Cedar Cove, and with each update the area or attraction I'm working on gets developed more too. Some of these areas and attractions may span across multiple episodes with the scale of this series that I'm aiming for, so there's quite a lot to look forward to. The channel members will have already seen a few parts of this as well, and I'm very excited to share even more in the future as this park series really begins. I then spent the rest of my time detailing and adding more elements to this park, including adding a few assets from this highly detailed European map that's on the workshop, like these farm buildings and outhouses. And I also added this cute tractor. Hey, look at all that detailing, I'll stop. Anyway, I added a lot more detailing around the fields, including these dividing sort of passageways, I guess, and pathways that the tractor would take in between the individual fields. My idea with this is that by the time this area of the park becomes to be developed in the future, that these trees will be a bit more established and they will have to be retained within the park. So that obviously presents some design challenges to design around them, which I think could be really fun and interesting. Then I thought I'd add one of my final few bits of detailing around this area, which is a bit of a retaining sort of, I don't actually know its exact name. It's sort of like a retaining mesh to stop some of the rocks from falling onto the railway track. You'd assume this would be a more recent addition and wouldn't have sort of been built around the same time the railway track was. You'd assume it would have been in place because rocks have fallen onto it. But I just thought it was a nice little design feature to add in at this stage. Then this template park is pretty much finished. The last thing I do here is add some houses. Like I said, these blueprints would appear again at some point, but yeah, that's it. This template starter realistic park, that's a mouthful, is finished. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. We're going to take a quick tour around it now so you can see a few more details that you might not have captured in the time lapse and sort of see it from an overhead view. But yeah, that is it. This is done. This is the official start of my next park series, Moorview Meadow, and the first actual build episode should be dropping soon, depending on how much time I have with my uni work, which is coming to an end, thankfully, for this year. So yeah, I'm really excited to start this project, really excited to get into this series in general. It's going to be my best one yet, hopefully, and I've got so much that I'd like to do with it, so yeah. And I'm really excited to see where this one's going to go. But first, let's have a look around this map. Welcome to Moorview Meadow. This is my complete, realistic template starter park map file, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's done, and I'm so happy with it. I honestly expected this series to probably start a lot later with sort of how much uni work I've got going on at the moment, but it didn't really take too long. I'm in a tree. There we go. It didn't really take too long to build all of this. I just sort of just powered it out for a few days and managed to get this all finished, and I'm really happy with the way that it all looks. Obviously, this whole landscape is set to change quite a bit. This building here will be retained, like I mentioned earlier, as part of the park. I still need to decide what part of the park that will be, but yeah, the rest of the land is going to change loads over the course of the next, I don't know, probably, I'm in the roof, like maybe 10, 20 episodes. I don't really know how much I want to get out of this, but I do want to develop it into my most detailed park yet, and I'm very happy with sort of how I've done so far for this first episode. So hopefully this will be a precedent set for the amount of detail and like level of stuff going on in this park that I want to produce over the next however many episodes. But yeah, I'm really happy with it. I've got quite a fair bit planned out so far of what coasters, like I kind of got an idea of where they're going to go, but I've got sort of a lineup of coasters that I want to add to this, different areas, different things that's going to happen during the series, and like events, I guess. I'll leave that there. It's quite an interesting tease. I've got some pretty interesting ideas of what I want to do with this series. The view of the bridges down here, got the, what's it called? Train bridge, that's the word, on the left there, and the car bridge on the right. Obviously this sort of stuff isn't as detailed as the stuff closer to the entrance to the park, because it's sort of more out the way. I'm not really going to see much of it. Got the houses here. Obviously these might have been built for, I guess, the people that work in the rail yard originally. I've got the train line running past there up against that big hill. Quite a lot of farmland as well. I'm sort of picturing maybe this used to be a farm, but they needed somewhere to put a rail yard, so the farmer probably let them buy this front portion. I don't know. I don't know the sort of the previous history before this, but this is where we are starting out. We have a farm and a rail yard that I am going to try and turn into a theme park, developing over the next however long it takes me to do it. But I'm so excited. It's probably good to mention that my main precedents for developing this, I sort of created a little bit of a list in my head, but it's sort of going to be like Alton Towers, quite a little bit of some European parks as well. I was watching vlogs from like Nigloland and is it Flitzblom Park, however you say it. Quite a few parks like that, mainly European ones, I think. Although I have been looking at certain elements of like some US parks like Marineland, Dollywood, Silver Dollar City for influence. There's stuff coming from everywhere that's going to be in this, and the park template is on the workshop now if you would like to have a start of making your own park. If you do, please do share some photos in the Discord server. I'd love to see what stuff you create with it. But yeah, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. I will see you in the start of the series. Goodbye.